what is a closed loop treatment? And then what is closed loop digital meditation, and how does it affect attentive capacity?
Great. So this, let's bridge now from cognition crisis to plasticity, right? So we need better brains. Our brains can become better through plasticity. I don't think anyone denies that. I think that people might question the limits of plasticity, how to harness plasticity, what aspects are more plastic than others, but our brains are plastic, right? We know that. It's how you learn throughout your life, right? So we need better brains. Plasticity is a route to that. I feel confident saying that. How do you maximally drive plasticity? How do we do the test that I said? Let's push on the system as intensely as we can, just like someone training to become an Olympic athlete would do. And what happens? How much do we respond? Where are the limits? What are the individual differences? Things of that nature. And so when you're designing an approach to maximally harness plasticity, which was my goal 15 years ago, thinking about how to do this, there's two main routes to do this. One is that you could just take a drug, right? Let's just give that its own space, because that's like the main route that people tend to do, right? My mood's off, my attention's off. I'm going to take a drug and hopefully just make it get better. And we've been doing that for like 70 years, whether or not you're debilitated by it and it's prescribed by a doctor, or you just get it from a friend in your university because you want to focus on your test. Like, this is one of the routes that people take to improve cognition. And that's a whole long discussion about why that has happened and how poorly it has served us. But I'm just going to put that over here, but it's worth mentioning. And as a neurologist, that was what I was taught. That's how you help people. You give them drugs. And that's what medicine is. Medicine is dispensing drugs. And that just has not served us well. And so I became really inspired by my early plasticity work to say, have we really exploited or capitalized on this phenomena of our brain to change itself in response to experience as much as we could? Or have we just said, that doesn't work prematurely, and said, we just need a molecule to fix it, which is basically what we've done for 70 years. Like, we all grew up in that system. And so when you challenge yourself, as I did, and say, okay, let's say plasticity has not been maximally harnessed because we have not had experiences that are powerful, personalized enough to push our brains, what would that look like? So the first thing that I arrived at was that it needs to be adaptive in a personalized way. And so what a closed loop system is a system where the input and the output are connected in a feedback loop. And there are many examples of closed loop systems in our lives right now, in our engineering, output. So for example, in my office right now, there's a closed loop system. There's a thermostat that is detecting the temperature in this room. And then, depending on the set point, either using a cooling or heating system to establish homeostasis and equilibrium. That is a closed loop system. It's constantly using data to update and to maintain a certain environmental condition. Modern day washers and dryers use them. You don't say, dry my clothes for 30 minutes, right? And then check, oh, it needs more. That's an open system, right? That's like a horrible way to do it. What you really want to do is put moisture sensors inside the dryer and say, dry my clothes until they're dry. And then you're constantly detecting it. We have very few of these closed loop systems in terms of our physiology and from the medical system. So they're starting systems to detect the onset of seizure and fire electrodes and stimulators to prevent them, pacemakers, starting to use insulin dispensers coupled with glucose monitoring in real time. These are other examples of closed loop systems in medicine. But when it comes to our mind and our brains, we really don't have any. And so the idea behind a closed loop system for plasticity and for attention is to basically do what I just described to you, to use data to guide the output. So for this particular situation, the data would be, how much are you focusing? How consistently are you focusing? At what level is that occurring? What type of decisions are you making? How's your memory? Whatever the input is, capturing that data in as close to real time as possible, and then using that data to challenge and reward someone in an appropriate way for the level that they're at. And that closed loop between the data of how you're performing, and that could be physiological or behavioral outputs, and the environment that's being presented back to you, the challenges and the rewards and the stimuli that you're receiving, is a closed loop system. And I would say that creates a closed loop cognitive intervention. That's all that I work on. We've designed a dozen of them, over a dozen. And that creates a system by which an equilibrium occurs, just like the temperature in this room. That equilibrium is that you are being challenged and rewarded right at the level of your ability. A little bit more, and you're likely to say, this is too hard for me, I'm done. A little bit less, and you're likely to say, I'm bored, this is too easy, I'm done. And so if you can maintain that equilibrium, you could challenge someone optimally. And then, because our brains are plastic, the bar just raises over time. We don't raise the bar. The bar raises because our brain has that inherent capacity to develop and to adapt. And so as it raises, the system just moves the equilibrium point and keeps the challenge right at the level that is appropriate for you. So that's closed loop designs in terms of cognitive interventions.
Well, I'm really glad that you mentioned drugs and that they haven't been working, because this reminded me of a question that I probably should, or it gave me the idea for a question that I probably should have asked you earlier. So just let me ask it now. So as opposed to the conventional medical model, I'm wondering what you think the essential or most important characteristics of the treatments that you develop are. And here are some that just occur to me. I mean, one, they're minimally invasive. They're hopefully optimized to have less or no side effects. They promote autonomy rather than helplessness and dependence. And then perhaps an added benefit is that they promote self-understanding or an actual personal growth and the development of abilities rather than just being something you passively take. Okay, and I'm wondering if there are any others that come to your mind that I might have missed.
Oh yeah, like here's a big one that you didn't mention, but I am very close to this one because this is the world I'm in now. So all the things you said are true. They're guiding principles, but scalability, accessibility.
Great, yeah.
People need to get this, right? This suffering is pervasive throughout the world. Places that we can't get doctors, teachers, pharmaceuticals in, they're walking around with cell phones and Wi-Fi, right? Like, we have built a technological infrastructure of both devices and cloud-based servers and Wi-Fi, and it's just going to increase over time, that we've largely used for entertainment and communication purposes, but can be used and delivered as tools to help accomplish the goals that we're talking about. So that is another critical part, is that this basically uses the same infrastructure that we use for Twitter and video games and Zoom calls. Like, all of this is already in place. So that is really important to me, because pharmaceuticals just have already proven that they're not deliverable at that scale. Then there's many places in the world that just, Asia is a perfect example. Like, all of Asia doesn't really want their kids on drugs at all. And I get it. Or anyone. There's almost not even a difference between drugs and pharmaceuticals through some lens. And so there is that opportunity that this type of treatment, digitally delivered treatments, are going to have the opportunity to scale and reach people so much more effectively, which from a very practical point of view is meaningful to me. And so that's another asset and something that I pay a lot of attention to.
Yes, our high-powered handheld communication devices that you mentioned earlier. This is one reason why we're well disposed now to combat the cognition crisis, and it's kind of this double-edged sword you mentioned to me in an email, that the same culprit of the crisis is exactly what can get us out of it.
This is why I don't do 10-minute interviews, because it is confusing to people that someone that wrote a book called The Distracted Mind builds video games. And it takes a little bit of time to unpack the fact that technology, any technology, fire, nuclear, processing, whether it's fusion or, all of these things cut both ways, right? All of technology, it could cook your food, it could burn your house down, right? And drugs could save your life or kill you. I mean, none of this has a morality, its own directionality. It's all how it's used intentionally and how we monitor the consequences. And it's the same thing with technology, whether it be video games or social media. It can be delivered for such different outcomes. And so, yes, I could write a book talking about the difficulties of our brains managing to live in this world we've created and all the technology, and also develop intentionally and validate and constantly monitor, deliver thoughtfully video games as a type of medicine. And I think those are completely compatible views. They're just all about intentionality and how you use things and how you monitor them. So I'm incredibly excited about technology as a solution to the cognition crisis, and as a way of pushing our plasticity beyond the level that anyone that thinks that we have a limit we can't pass, I would challenge them to say we just have not tried hard enough. And I think technology gives us that opportunity.